Good morning, everyone. It is 1 a.m. here in Taiwan, and welcome to the Chess Chat. I am Uncle Dominic. Today, we'll be talking about an interesting topic and also a very difficult topic, which is difficulty in life. Let's find out a way how we can overcome it. But here's the thing: life is, we all know, it's not easy. It's full of trials. It's full of lots of things that's stopping us from getting where we want to. But we should not give up on it. We should figure out how we can overcome it. So today we have with us today Tina Huynh, and she will be talking to us a little bit more about certain things that is stopping us from getting achieving what we want, particularly about food. Right. So let's invite Tina. Hello, Tina. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Uncle Dominic. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Could you introduce to our listeners out there and viewers a little bit more about yourself?
Yes. My name again is Tina Huynh. I am living in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. So it is, I think, 12 p.m. my time right now. And my story is that growing up, I was a little bit chubby, a little bit overweight, nothing crazy. I was not obese by any means, but I always had it in my head that I needed to lose weight. And so in my 20s, I started dieting and I started getting into weight loss, and I didn't have the right information in front of me and I didn't know how to do about it. So back then, the common advice that you would see online for women is that you eat like 1,200 calories a day and that's how you lose weight. So that's extreme calorie restriction for anyone that doesn't know. And so then I was always hungry, I was starving, and then that kind of led me into like my eating disorder. And I also have ADHD, which means that women with ADHD tend to have more shame feelings, more guilt. Like we always feel like there's something wrong with us. So when I started losing weight, or trying to lose weight, I felt that there was something was wrong with me because I couldn't lose weight because it was so hard. Because you see like stories online and people make it look so easy and they make it like, oh, you just do this and you lose weight. So because I couldn't do that, I felt that there was a lot of things wrong with me. And then that kind of spiraled into guilt. I thought that I was broken. And then that spiraled into my eating disorder because how I would cope with uncomfortable feelings back then was with food. So I was trying to diet, but then I would feel sad that I was failing at my diet. So then I would eat to make myself feel better. And then I failed at my diet even more. Um, so that's kind of like an extreme example of how this all kind of turned into an eating disorder. But I feel like a lot of people can relate with everything that happened with me. Maybe I took it to an extreme level by developing an eating disorder. But I think a lot of people can relate to the story of like, they want to lose weight, but they feel like they don't know how, or they feel like something's broken and it's not working. And then you get sad about it and then you eat. And then like that kind of compounds on the, oh, wait, but wasn't I trying to lose weight? So I spent my entire 20s with an eating disorder, struggling with the shame and guilt. And I had to go through a lot of growth and a lot of learning in order to overcome all of that. So I mean, I'm still learning all of the time, but I feel like I went from such a deep spot of shame to really understanding and loving myself today. And I think that there's so much to share there.
Mhm. Well, that's a good intro and a lot of information out there that you just shared to us. Particularly, I'm curious about this food disorder, right? Eating disorder, not food disorder,
Mhm.
but eating disorder. Like you mentioned that because of guilt and for because is this because of the way people look at you, the way people you know judge you by it? Would that be the case? Would you say?
I I think so growing up, my mother always told me that I had weight to lose, so I had her
Mm,
voice in my head. But I don't think anybody thought anything of me because I wasn't exceptionally large or anything. I was just a kid, right? So I think just having my mom's voice there and then paired with ADHD, um, then I just started feeling like I was broken myself. So it was definitely me judging myself more than anything. And
mm,
I think we always find that our toughest critic is usually ourselves. And the
definitely.
yeah, the voices that we have in our head. And I'm pretty sure like the negative self-talk that I was giving myself, my mother would never even say to me. So it just kind of started as a seed, and then like the monster grew in my head, and
Hmm.
it was entirely fabricated by myself.
Would you also say that it's because maybe back in those days, people will say you watch too much TV and all these TV versions of women or men that's ideally perfect, that's influenced the way we see ourselves? Would you say that as well? Or like magazines out there?
Yeah, definitely. I think having access to social media back then was not good for my health because
Mm,
I didn't realize that people only posted, their highlight reels. And I think that's why me on social media now, I'm very authentic and vulnerable. I talk about my struggles, and I try to make people see that like even though I've been through this journey and I've been working on my eating for a long time, I still have eating struggles. There are still days when it's hard for me. So I try to make that very clear for people. But back then, I don't know if it was just like the way I was raised in my mindset, but I would see these people and I thought that like that's how you're supposed to be, and that like losing weight is supposed to be easy, like being fit is supposed to be easy. It just like came naturally to you or you weren't it, right? So I just thought that because it wasn't natural to me that I was broken and it wasn't it. So I would try all of these things to try to fix myself, not realizing that like anything that you want in life is going to be hard work. And that like anyone that looks like they're having easy success, it wasn't easy.
mm,
It was never easy. Like they have probably been working on whatever skill that they have behind the scenes for 10 plus years, and now you're looking at the result of all of that work. And I was comparing my beginner self to,
mm,
professionals,
mm.
and feeling like I was so broken.
When this all happened, it just causes you to not have a good stable life, right? So that all the things just tumbles down. Would you say that?
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, I call it my lost decade, the eating disorder years, because it was most of my 20s. And unfortunately, the only thing that I could really think about during that time was like, how do I eat less? How do I lose weight? And how do I exercise more? I'm not even kidding you. That was my entire brain space. So I wasn't learning. I wasn't like, like building a business or anything. I wasn't growing in my life personally or professionally. I was just obsessed with losing weight. And I know how devastating that feels to me, and that is why I feel so, inspired to talk about it now, to
Mhm,
share this
mhm,
message with
mhm.
you so that I hope other people don't go through the same thing that I did.
I understand. For me, for example, I grew up actually pretty chubby as well when I was young, and as I grew in my 20s, I was actually pretty skinny. But never once in my entire time I ever thought about that my weight or the way I look, my size, is a concern until I start actually until I came to Taiwan and start working in Taiwan as a teacher. Um, Particularly because most people in Taiwan are generally very skinny, and they see someone larger as someone who is very fat. Or and they will actually say to you, like, it's for my students will say, "Oh, Dominic, you are so fat." I'm like, "Ah, okay, well, if my first few years in Taiwan, I actually, like you said, you felt the guilt that I had that, and but I was in my 20s, I was in my 30s already, so it was kind of like, oh, eventually I kind of told myself, fine, I'm fat, accept it, this is who I am. So since then, ever since then, any student who call me fat, I'm like, okay, doesn't matter to me, I can call myself fat as well. So it's kind of like I accepted who I am. So I think most people out there also will accept who they are. Like, this is who I am, don't change me. Like, social media cannot change me, because if I'm fat, I'm fat. I like it big. I like it large, right? I think there's a couple advertisements recently where they have large models, like modeling clothes, right? They're trying to prove to people, or to try to say to people that um, size is not a problem, weight is not a problem. It's just the way how you see me, and I don't want you to see me that way. I should be seeing the way how I want it to be felt. And there's a few celebrities out there is having problems with this as well, mainly because we are judging them and we are saying things to them, or people online are saying bad things about them, and they feel guilty. And for you, like, you overcome it by eventually decided that it's gonna all go away. How does it all start? Like, how do you decide to change?
So I had bulimia, which is binging and purging, the eating disorder
Okay.
that I had. So that is the, I mean, anorexia also is very bad, but eating disorders have a very, very high mortality rate. And in one of my binge and purge sessions, I think I was looking at myself in the mirror. I was just not impressed by what I saw. I was all red.
Yeah.
I was tearing up, and I just kind of saw what I was doing to myself in that moment. Like up until that point, I had only been focused on really trying to get skinnier because that was the goal, I guess. And at that moment, I just saw myself and I was like, I realized that if I continued on this path, that I was going to die, because I had done a ton of research on eating and food and eating disorders, and I knew that because I could start to feel the physical effects of my eating disorder too. So I just felt it, and I knew that if I continued, I was going to die, and it was probably going to be soon. That was kind of the changing moment for me. That
Mm.
kind of shifted me in the other direction. It wasn't easy by any means. It was definitely years long in order to heal myself from that, and I'm still healing all the time, because like the eating disorder, it's really a series of thoughts and behaviors and
Mhm.
beliefs, right?
Mhm.
Like a belief that I am a bad person,
Mhm.
and the belief that like I'm not good enough the way I am. And you can't change that overnight. So it was really just like, how can I learn to reinforce this idea back into myself? How can I teach myself that I am enough, that I am a good person, that I don't need to look a certain way in order to get people to love
That's right.
me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think the
That's it.
biggest thing for me was that I never loved myself. And so I thought that by being skinnier,
Mhm.
I could get other people to love me. But that was like the big realization that I had to have was like, I needed to accept myself, just like you said, the way that I am, and learn to love myself. And from that place, I can grow and achieve any goals that I want. But um, I guess my entire life up until almost my 30s, I was always just trying to get other people to love me.
Mhm.
And I had to come to that turning point where it's like, oh, I actually had to make that realization one day. It's like I don't love myself. That's why I can't get other people to love me. I have to love myself first.
That's the thing. Well, I guess recently, not recently, well, the generation nowadays, like everything is social media. People want more likes on Instagram, more likes on Facebook, or all this social media sites. And getting these likes, they have to show certain things, and like fit body or whatever. And when they do this, they get satisfaction from it, but in reality they're hurting themselves in some ways. But of course, I think there's some good in this. Like, when I first see this in generation where people start you doing selfies, and for me, it felt like you're ego boasting, you're boosting your ego. It's like, why would you do that? Like, why you want to show everyone what you do? And then eventually I felt like, actually, it's pretty good if I do selfies, more selfies of myself. I tend to see myself more, and I tend to like myself more. And this is, I'm going to say this particularly for guys, because most guys don't wake up in the morning and look in the mirror. Because I bet all women wake up in the morning and look in the mirror. And because guys usually don't, just wake up in the morning, go for breakfast, and get to work, maybe comb their hair a little bit. But rarely we look in the mirror, and rarely we look at ourselves. So in this case, when people start looking at yourself more, you tend to see your image more, and you want to change it and be better. So I guess in some ways it's like that, but some bad things as well, it will hurt you, because once people start judging you, and you accept it, like you said, all those voices that's coming in, it will actually hurt you. And for younger people, like out there, especially for my students, like every day in their life they have to be skinny, so they eat a little bit. They go and buy a donut, but they only eat one bite of the donut, and they share between five people. And for me, it was like, why? I mean, but for them, they enjoy it. So they say it's a way of losing weight, but enjoying a little bit of life, I guess.
Mhm.
But I don't know. What do you think about this? Like a donut sharing between five people. For me, I feel like it's okay, but at the same time, I don't know. What do you think about this situation?
I think it really depends. The answer is usually it depends. So it depends on like how often they go out and eat the donut, right? If they want to eat the donut every day, then it makes sense to share one every day. But if the donut, if they only have it like once a week, once a month, then it's fine to have the whole donut to yourself, right? So it really depends on the goals of the students and what they're doing it for. Like, um, are they doing it from a place of like restriction and hating themselves? Or are they doing it from a place of like, ooh, this donut's so good. Like, I get to have some and I get to share it with people. So it really depends on the mindset that they approach it with, because the mindset is everything and it can change everything. And there are certain behaviors that people have that aren't very healthy, but that doesn't mean that that they have disordered eating or that they're eating poorly. It just really depends on, like, number one, how often it happens. And
Mhm,
I think more importantly, number two, like, how do you feel yourself around it?
mhm,
So, two people might be eating the same donut, but one person would be like, "Ooh, this donut's so delicious. I get
mhm,
to have it and I'm so happy." And the other person might have like the mindset that I did. We're like, "Ooh, I really want to eat this donut, but it's going to make me fatter. So I'm only going to eat a bite." Like, can you see how it's
right.
two different,
Two different
completely
ideas. Yeah.
active attitudes?
Mm,
So it really, really depends on how someone is approaching that. And
mm.
like, you don't really know what's going on in people's head. So I just try to talk about it as much as I can and try to slowly brainwash people into love
Brainwash people.
yourself
That's a pretty
first.
strong word right there.
Yeah, just love yourself first. But you mentioned the younger generation, and
Mm,
I like I'm so scared for the younger generation because everyone is on social media now,
mhm,
and it is very judgmental and it can get very toxic very, very quickly.
mhm,
But at the same time, the younger generation, they're also celebrating people the way that they are. So if someone is confident enough in themselves to present themselves as like, this is who I am, then I think most of the younger generation are very receiving of it. They're like, okay, that's you. Like, you want to do that? Like, cool. I love that. And I think that's why they're so celebrating of,
mhm,
people having their own pronouns. Like, they want to be called certain things. And it's very funny if you're on TikTok, like the people blow up for like talking about super niche things that maybe used to be really weird back in the day, but like when someone is just so excited about their hobby and you can just see it in their eyes, like they love it. um, those people do really well on TikTok. I remember watching a guy talk about his train set, like his toy train
mhm,
set, and like he would have a huge setup and it was really cool. It was massive. Um, and like back in the day, you might have described him as like nerdy or weird, but this guy had, I think, like millions of followers, and he would just talk to his followers about his train set. Um, and I love the younger generation for celebrating people as they are. So I think it's a double-edged sword, social media.
mhm,
It can be really bad, but also like this guy, he's able to find his people
mhm.
better. And so I think it's also helping people feel really less alone at the same time. So
I think that's
it's
because he accepted himself and he understand that this is his style, his enjoyment. So he's happy about it. And like you mentioned,
exactly.
like if my student enjoyed the donut, I think that's great. You know, you don't think about it so much. Like when I eat, I feel like I want to eat without stress. Like I feel like even though it's unhealthy sometimes, but feel like I want to be happy. You know, if I eat this and I'm happy, I'm fine with it. Some of my friends will say, "But you're gonna live a short life," and usually my response is like, "We're all gonna die anyway, so enjoy what I have right now." But here's the
It's
thing, though, in Taiwan, like students particularly, I notice quite a lot. Students who are particularly skinny or good looking in some ways, right? They tend to have lots of friends. Now, students who are larger in size, uh, not so good looking, I would say, for some, they will mention it, and they will have lesser friends. And so most of the times when I see them in class, they get bullied in a certain way, like by ignoring them or not helping them in some ways at all. And so this creates some kind of, I don't know, pushing them aside. And I do notice some larger students who are actually accepting of themselves, and they don't really care what's going on. They're just happy and go about and do the things they want to do. And this kind of people, well, this kind of students actually gain more and more friends because of their great personality. But for those who do not have great personality or larger size, then they have these problems of bullying. And as a teacher, I always try to educate my students to tell them, so what is he larger size? He's happy. He's enjoying his life. Are you enjoying your life? We should not, criticize people or judge people based on their sizes. I mean, everyone grows up differently. Some larger, some smaller, but doesn't matter. We should accept who they are and accept who ourselves. We just have to be happy. What do you think about this situation where students are pushing other students aside? And how do you think they can overcome this? Like, I tell them don't do it, but they will still do it because that is what the stigma or what the society is doing.
Yeah, that's really sad. I feel like you need to empower the students to really understand the effects of bullying and how lonely that it can make some people. And just ask, maybe not all students would be receptive, but I think there are some students that understand how lonely it could be, because there are still, lots of skinnier people that have lots of health issues. Just because someone is in a smaller body doesn't mean that they are healthier. You can have a larger body and be healthy as well, because health comes from a whole bunch of different aspects, right? Health is exercise, genetics, even, which we don't have any control over, and also societal pressure, like which neighborhood you live in could determine your health, right? And stress is a huge factor on that as well. So, maybe the popular student feels more stressed because they feel like they have to maintain this image of perfection. So maybe even reaching out to like the popular kids and being like, is this like who you really want to be? Like, are you sure like this is your path? And helping them understand that like it is very lonely for everyone, regardless if you have friends or not. You can be lonely and have a big circle of friends. So just focusing on that human connection, like how can I get to know my classmates better? Because people have varied parts of themselves, and you don't know everything about everyone, and there's always something to learn about people, and you can always connect to people soul to soul. So I would really encourage them to find out like what's something about someone that you didn't know before, like what haven't they shared with other people. And maybe what's a story that they have, what's a challenge that they've had to overcome. And that's how you can get people to connect with each other over challenges. Maybe getting doing games in your
Mm,
classroom, and having assigning groups and making people spread out so that they have to talk to other people and have to get to know them. And that's really all it. Like once you are able to relate to someone, then you can really understand them and where they come from and their troubles. I think it's unfortunate that there's so much bullying. Um, I was kind of one of those like nerdier kids that kind of kept to myself and never really talked to anyone either. So I know what it's like to like feel like scared in a big high school, and it's lonely. It's really lonely. So really talking to the more popular kids and being like, listen, like you could change someone's life just by having a conversation with them. You
mm,
really never know. That might be like their edge. So, and that's all that it takes is just like a smile, a conversation. You don't have to do anything crazy to affect someone's life. So I would go at it from that
That's
angle.
good. That's good. I actually liked it. I do know some students who actually, once you tell them about it, they're pretty receptive about it, and they start to change and start helping those students. Like recently, I had a student that's not very good in English, for example, and at first, the other students was pretty reluctant trying to help him. It's like, oh, you should just try yourself. It's like, it's okay, you can help a little. It's okay to help a little. There's nothing wrong with it. If you're helping a little, he will help you back in the future with whatever you need. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's right, that's true. So you start helping him. I can see they start gaining a friendship there, and so it's pretty helpful. But also, like you mentioned the games where it separate them into groups. I like that. I tend to do it quite often for my high school kids or older kids or older students or adults. But because of that, I tend to realize to see obviously who is being pushed aside. And in Taiwan, there's a thing called unconscious bullying because for them, most students they think bullying is just physical. There's no mental involved. There's
Hmm.
no vocally. There's no oral bullying or any of those things, right? It's more about pushing or somebody. So if I'm not pushing the person, then like punching the person or anything, that means I'm not bullying. And so when we do groups activities, you can see that I don't want to work with this person. They start pushing their chairs a little bit to the side, and I'm like, oh no, what are you doing? And so sometimes these kids, no matter how I explain to them, they would not be able to understand. But here's the thing, like you mentioned for yourself that you figure out that it's hurting yourself with this eating disorder thing. It's hurting yourself physically as well and mentally, and then you realize that you're probably gonna die soon. And then I would say that will be at the age of your thinking that life is ending. All right, so it's like the crisis, the severe part. But most people haven't reached there yet, right? It's like you mentioned, some when they reach there they take the alternative. They didn't like you turn around. They just went ahead, and there's cases of death and suicide and stuff like that. So how can we help, or how can you help? Like advice that you can give to students or to people out there who are actually having this kind of mindset right now that they're going on, and
Hmm.
how can they actually make a switch before they reach the stage, the point in their life, or crisis point in their life where they have to really think, do I really want to live or do I really want to move forward? You know?
Hmm.
So,
Just before we get into that, I wanted to bring something up about the students and the
right.
bullying. I was actually a bully myself too, and I never realized it though. So I
Mm,
used to, poke fun at one of my classmates, and just like I thought we were just, poking fun and bantering, I guess you could call it. But one day, I think before we graduated, he was like, "Why were you always so mean to me?" And it just like broke my heart because I didn't realize that I was actually hurting his feelings. Um, and so maybe that's what students need to do, just like call it out, like, why are you being so mean? Or even like as you see it, because maybe someone's behaving in a manner that they think is normal and they don't realize that it's actually hurting people. So that like I still think about that moment all the time, and I still am like, I can't believe I
actually,
was
when you
mean
say
to
that, I
him for
actually
all
teach the
those years.
students how to say that as well. Like, why are you so mean to me? Like, why did I do wrong?
Yeah,
So yeah, I actually taught my students to say that. It's the exact same thing. Yeah. Full response.
yeah, that's okay. That's great. That's great. So how can I help people make that decision about what to do? And I think an important thing to realize is that um, we're always uncomfortable as human beings, and nobody knows what they're doing. That was one of my big realizations too. Like I thought, like growing up in Asian culture, you're taught like your elders know everything. You must always
Mm,
respect their elders because like
mm,
they know everything. So me, I gave myself no personal power. I just believed that what everyone told me was gospel, and so I only did what other people told me to do. But I had to realize for myself that like they don't really know what they're doing either. So, just because I'm listening to them doesn't mean that I'm necessarily doing the right thing, especially not the right thing
mm,
for me. Because, my mother was like pushing me to go into like the medical field, to be a lawyer and stuff.
That's
And
the
she
Asian thing.
thought
Everyone,
that
every,
those
oh,
were
every
the
Asian wants to be a doctor. I was one too.
of course. Yeah. So she thought that that would be the best thing for me, but it wasn't. So it was like uncomfortable to tell her, no, this is not what I'm going to do. And it's also uncomfortable for me to go into the medical field and do something that I don't want to do. So like whatever you choose, it's usually uncomfortable if you're going in an upward direction of growth, because you have to remember that like you're going through your life for the first time. You don't know what's coming. You don't know what to expect. And most of the time, you probably don't know how to do what you're trying to do. So, like, it's hard either way. And I think I struggled with my life because I had the perception that it was easy, because I guess social media makes it look easy. So I'm looking at all these people and I'm like, my life is so hard. Like, why does my life suck? But I think if you just come to terms with that, like it's difficult either way, then you get to choose your difficulty. Like losing weight is difficult, but gaining weight is also difficult, right? Because then, you know, if you gain too much weight, like your cardiovascular ability goes down and it becomes more difficult to
Mhm.
exercise. That's difficult. But losing weight is also difficult because you're pushing yourself and you're trying to, exercise more. So if you just acknowledge that, like, all of the paths are difficult, then you can choose which one you really want. Because you're not choosing based on like easiness, you're choosing based on what you think is best for you. Does that
It,
make
it does.
sense?
It does. Like, I do want to go back about the elders part a little bit, where all our elderly thinks everything is right. I would say yes, it's true because I'm a father now, so everything I think is right. But at the same time, you know, most parents, if they don't know something, they'll make up something sometimes. But I feel like that's okay because that is in their right. So you have to respect them for some reason. And then so my parents asked me to be a doctor or a lawyer, and I right now I kind of regret it because those are some money making jobs out there. I'm a teacher. I don't make enough money. But that's
Mhm.
the thing though. Sometimes the messages that they give are actually pretty good. But sometimes if they start to say things like you're fat, you need to get skinnier because so more people will like you. But if we think about that, that is what they're trying to protect us from. Because there's a stigma out there of people thinking that fat people or chubbier people will have difficult life or we they're not going to be successful, right? So our parents are or our elderlies are actually thinking about that and trying to save us from that problem. And I if we think of it that
Mhm.
way, that is true. But if we think of a way that they are constricting us from doing what we want, and that can be also true because we can't be what we want to be in the future. And but there's different ways to see through it, right? And so
Yeah.
it's
It really depends on, the elders themselves and their goals. I don't know if every family is like this, but my family, my parents, or maybe just my mother, she grew me up to be, she raised me to um, always like double check with her. Like I wasn't empowered to make my own decisions. Like she kind of raised me to be like, everything must go through her. And I think with that kind of mindset, it's troublesome because then I'm not my
Mhm.
own person. I'm just her daughter.
But you are.
And so yes, yes, but like I guess I'm very Western and like my life is mine in the end. But I kind of struggle between the balance of like how much am I going to listen
Mhm.
to my mother and how much am I doing it myself? Like I am very much involved with my family. I work in, the family business. I still live at home with my mom right now. Actually, I just moved
Okay.
back in. Um, so I'm very much my mother's daughter, and I there is a very, very fine line between making my mom happy and making me happy. So I dance along that line all of the time. And I respect her, point of view all of the time. But I think when it comes down to it, you really have to do what makes you happy too. Because a lot of people I see, or a lot of my friends, I see them only making their parents happy, and they themselves are miserable. So I'm very much trying to keep myself happy and my mother happy, and it's that line. And I don't think we should be sacrificing ourselves completely for our parents. I think we can do both. And so it's just like, how can I make
Mm,
both work too? I don't think that, as children, we should be expected to sacrifice our lives for our parents. Obviously, I'm not, ditching my mother in any way. I still take care of her all of the time. But, like, where's the line? I guess that's a good question for you.
for me, I feel like the how do we say, the thing where we're respecting or the lines between parents and children, like the way of their life. I feel like if you're under a certain age, for me, under a certain age, right? Not necessarily you living under my roof, you follow my rules. Kind of true in some ways, but I feel like if you're under a certain age, like I'll say 18 or 17, like most of for my parents, for me, like under 17 is, try to do the stuff their way, their ideas, their plan. But as soon as you reach that after 17 or 18, you should be able to think for yourself, and at the same time, like you said, work out with your family, uh, or make them happy, keep yourself happy. But if you are way below that age, like say 12 or 13, and I feel like if you start thinking that your life matters more than your parents, there is good and some bad in it. I wouldn't say everything's all good, like, and so
Mhm.
yeah, it's hard to, like you say, it's hard to differentiate. It's hard to make it like it's all good in one way. What's the more the pros and the cons, but it's all, I don't know, mushy,
I do agree with. Yeah, as a teen, you should probably be listening to your parents most of the time. And then as an adult, you should still listen to your parents, but like
Mm.
to a degree. But you should definitely learn to be your own person. And I think that's where I struggled with, because my parents did not teach me to be my own person. I was just only their daughter and I must do everything that they say. And that's probably, the line that I dance
Well,
on now.
that's because I would guess in those, in their mindset, they're trying to protect you, and the things that they say is how they think they can protect you. If you go out of that circle of their protection, they have uncertainties on
Oh,
how they can solve it. Maybe it's not a lot of their experience. So, for example, if you move out to a different country and they have never done that before, they feel like there's an uncertainty there. How are they gonna handle it? How are you gonna handle it? They'll be thinking of ways, and so of course it depends on some parents, like Western thinking parents or Eastern thinking parents. But yeah, so speaking about that as well, like Asian parents tend to, I don't know, for Asian parents, for me, they tend to see image as important things. So like the was it thick face, or our face is very important for a lot of things. Even I feel like even in Western culture, like it's kind of similar as well. Some people, some of the Asians in the Western culture feels like face is very important. But what do you think about that? Because I think because of this, idea, it makes people want to keep a certain image, like you said, like keep a certain image, not because only of magazines, but because of the culture that they are from. Could this affect more?
mhm. I think that's prevalent in most places. In Western culture, definitely, there's the image of like the beautiful, white face with like the pointy nose and like the big eyes. So
Like a witch.
I think that's, yeah. So I culturally, like my family, we're very big on image as well, and that bothered me. Obviously, growing up with an eating disorder, because I was trying to fit into that image that I didn't fit in. Um, so I myself, I try to fight that all the time. But I try to fight it all the time, but at the same time, I know that I kind of fit in it too. So it is a weird line to balance all of the time. I image is definitely something that we were raised with. Like growing up, my family was very tumultuous. Like we were always fighting. There was always a big rift. But like you always made the image that you were a happy family when we went out. And that like bothered me to no end. I was like, can we just be real for a moment?
That's true. Yeah. But that's the thing, though. That's between, parents. They think a certain way, So in the culture, I don't know. I don't really have a Western parent, but you know, I would say they have a little bit of Western thinking, but mostly still very Asian, in a lot of things. And so I've grown up with some Western children and some Western families, and I've seen them how they affect their lives. One of the things that I used to mention, like when I fall down, my parents would not pick me up. They were like, "Why did you fall down? I told you not to fall down." You know, things like that. And where I see a Western kid who falls down, the parents would go, "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" You know, and I tend to see this nowadays in some Asian families in Taiwan. And when this happened, I feel like, oh, he's too protective of that kid. And then some kids with
Mhm.
their helmets on, walking on the road. I was like, I can see some, you know, good in that, but at the same time, I feel like it creates a different kind of, you know, life in the future. I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody really knows what is right. And also, the right parenting tactic also really just depends on the kid, like how the kid
Mm,
receives it. My siblings were probably raised the same way that I was, but I was the only one that ended up with an eating disorder. It was my personality that could not receive, the parenting style that my parents
mhm.
had. So, um, I think it depends on the kid. Like some kids may need to be coddled a little bit more, and some kids are super independent and don't need any of that. So it's something that I think about a lot. I think about child psychology a lot too, and like how we can raise good, strong kids so that they are unaffected, by
Mm.
bullying and stuff like that. And I'm not sure. It's a big topic, child psychology.
Sure, you wouldn't get it till you experience it. That's the thing. Like everyone's gonna be maybe I'm not gonna say everyone, but I used to say everyone used to be gonna be a father or a mother one day. Uh, you wouldn't know all these experiences from reading anything until you actually experience it. And when you experience it, it's not gonna be exactly what you say in the book. But I feel like most Asian parents have this same mindset, like you said, siblings. We teach them all the same way. They're all gonna grow up the same way.
Mhm.
So I'm not gonna change. But I think Western families' idea of educating students, educating certain students, educating children are a little bit different. Like each one has their own personality. But for Asians, it's like I feel like it's kind of like more like everyone's the same. All your kids, brothers and sisters, we're gonna treat all of them the same. Like for me, I kind of do the same thing
Yeah.
as well. So I feel like that's how I was brought up with, and I think that's great how I turned out. So I should do it to my kids as well.
I mean, we're always learning, and I really believe that my parents did the best that they can with what they knew and what they had, and I don't blame them for
Mm,
anything. And it just is what it
mm,
is, right? And it's my responsibility as my own person to do what I believe is right next. Like going forward, I'm not putting any blame on, my parents for how I'm handling my life. Like these are all choices that I'm making as a full-fledged adult. Um, and I think that realization and that choice is really important for us to continue to live um, fulfilling lives. Like I think we need to feel like we're in control of
mm.
our own lives, and that's how you can start to live a life that's fulfilling for you. Like if you feel unfulfilled, I'm guessing it's probably because you're not making your own decisions because you feel like other people are running your life for you. So, growing up, you really have to empower yourself and learn to live with like the decisions that you make and how you can start actually making these own
That, that's
decisions
a
too.
that's a good thinking. That's a good mindset as well. Well, Tina, thank you for coming to the show. I think our audience has learned a lot, and we have great discussion about it today. But let's sum it up. Do you have, let's say, 3 points? Is there 3 steps or 3 points that you could say to our audience out there to remember how they can overcome their difficulties, particularly on food disorder?
Um, Well, number one, a really good tip is to eat more slowly. If anyone struggles with eating, just eat slowly because it's going to teach you how to listen to your body and how to really appreciate the food that you're eating. Um, and like, don't have your phones, don't, watch YouTube or whatever. Just eat when you're eating. And then you will be able to listen to your body. So you'll know when you're full, you'll know when you're hungry, you'll know if you're eating just because you're bored. You'll know if like you're sick of whatever you're eating. And if you're really paying attention, then you'll also learn like, is this food making my body feel better or is this food making my body feel worse? So like if you don't take anything else, just eat more slowly and you can start to really impact your eating and your life in that way.
Thank you, Tina.
Um,
Was there?
yeah. Oh, and the second thing. Yeah. Second thing, love yourself and just come from a place of love all the time. Love yourself,
Mhm.
love others. And it's a really good, healthy way
I
to
really
live.
like that. I want to emphasize on it. We accept yourself. Don't think about what
Yes.
others think about you so much. If you're chubby, you're chubby. If you're
Mhm,
important thing is, are you happy about it? You need to make yourself happy about
mhm,
what you are doing instead of worrying about what other people are thinking about you. We have so much things on our plate. Focus on those things, and then be the better person in the future.
mhm,
Well, thank you, Tina. Thank you for
mhm.
everyone for watching Just Chat. Remember, if you like this show, please subscribe and share so that we can have more guests and we can talk on more different topics. Again, thank you, Tina, for coming tonight. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you.